Can viruses cause cancer? Can sunlight really change our DNA? And if cancer is driven by genetic mutations, why do some people develop it while others exposed to the same environment never do? After publishing the previous lesson, many of you asked these exact questions. Rather than answering them one by one in the comments, I thought it would be more useful to dedicate a short follow-up lesson to address them in greater detail. In this video, we'll expand on the role of lifestyle and environmental factors by exploring how infections, ultraviolet radiation, environmental carcinogens, and inherited genetic susceptibility contribute to cancer development. We'll also clarify some common misconceptions and connect these topics to the molecular mechanisms we've already discussed. Environmental exposures are not limited to chemicals. Certain infectious agents are also capable of initiating cancer. Unlike bacteria or viruses that cause short-lived illnesses, these microorganisms often establish chronic infections that persist for years. During this prolonged interaction with the body, they generate continuous inflammation, stimulate repeated tissue repair, interfere with normal cellular regulation, and increase the likelihood of DNA damage. One of the best-known examples is hepatitis B virus, or HBV, which chronically infects the liver. Persistent inflammation and repeated cycles of liver cell injury and regeneration significantly increase the risk of liver cancer. Human papillomavirus, commonly known as HPV, infects epithelial cells and produces proteins that disable key tumor suppressor pathways, dramatically increasing the risk of cervical cancer as well as cancers of the anus, penis, vulva, vagina, and the mouth and throat. Human immunodeficiency virus, or HIV, increases cancer risk through a different mechanism. By weakening the immune system, HIV reduces the body's ability to eliminate abnormal cells and control other cancer-causing infections, contributing to cancers such as Kaposi sarcoma, certain lymphomas, cervical cancer, and some head and neck cancers. Another important example is Helicobacter pylori, a bacterium that chronically infects the stomach. Persistent infection leads to long-term inflammation, progressive damage to the stomach lining, and a substantially increased risk of gastric cancer. Although these infectious agents are very different, they share a common pathway. Chronic infection leads to chronic inflammation. Chronic inflammation increases DNA damage and cellular stress. Over time, this creates an environment that favors the development of cancer. Ultraviolet radiation from the sun provides another powerful example of an environmental carcinogen. Unlike many chemical carcinogens that enter the body through food or inhalation, ultraviolet light directly penetrates the skin and damages DNA inside skin cells. When exposure is occasional, the body can often repair much of this damage. But repeated exposure over many years gradually overwhelms these repair systems, allowing mutations to accumulate. This is why melanoma and other skin cancers become increasingly common in people with extensive sun exposure or frequent use of tanning beds. Countries with intense sunlight, such as Australia, experience some of the highest melanoma rates in the world, highlighting the powerful relationship between ultraviolet radiation and skin cancer. The encouraging news is that many of these risks are preventable. Vaccination against HPV dramatically reduces the risk of cervical cancer and several other HPV-associated cancers. Vaccination against hepatitis B helps prevent chronic liver infection and significantly lowers the risk of liver cancer. Maintaining a healthy diet rich in fruits and vegetables provides antioxidants and protective nutrients that support normal cellular function. Regular physical activity reduces chronic inflammation and improves immune function. Avoiding tobacco eliminates one of the most important sources of preventable DNA damage. Protecting the skin from excessive ultraviolet exposure by limiting time in intense sunlight, using sunscreen, wearing protective clothing, and avoiding tanning beds helps preserve the integrity of skin cell DNA. Practicing safe sex and receiving recommended vaccinations further reduce exposure to cancer-causing infectious agents. One of the most important things to understand is that cancer is almost never caused by a single factor. Instead, it emerges from a complex interaction between our environment, our lifestyle, our genes, and simply the passage of time. Every day, our bodies are exposed to countless substances from the world around us. Fortunately, most of these exposures are harmless because our cells possess remarkable defense systems that continuously repair DNA damage and eliminate abnormal cells. But when harmful exposures become frequent or persistent, those protective systems can gradually become overwhelmed. Over months, years, or even decades, DNA damage accumulates. Genetic mutations begin to appear, and the foundation for cancer is slowly established. Many cancer-causing agents, known as carcinogens, are hidden in places we encounter every day. Some are found in the foods we eat, particularly processed meats, foods preserved with high levels of salt or nitrates, or foods contaminated with naturally occurring toxins such as aflatoxins. Others may contaminate drinking water through heavy metals, arsenic, industrial waste, or agricultural chemicals. The air we breathe can also contain carcinogens, including tobacco smoke, diesel exhaust, industrial emissions, and fine particulate pollution. In addition, prolonged exposure to industrial chemicals, pesticides, herbicides, solvents, and certain plastics can damage our DNA. Even something as familiar as sunlight contains ultraviolet radiation capable of directly injuring the DNA of skin cells. Although these exposures appear very different, they all trigger a remarkably similar biological process. Carcinogens damage DNA. Damaged DNA gives rise to mutations. Mutations alter the behavior of cells. As these altered cells continue dividing, they gradually acquire the characteristics that define cancer. This sequence, from environmental exposure to DNA damage, genetic mutation, abnormal cellular behavior, and ultimately cancer, is one of the central concepts in cancer biology. Perhaps surprisingly, the cells that are most vulnerable to these harmful exposures are not buried deep inside our organs. Instead, they are the epithelial cells that form the body's protective surfaces. These cells line the skin, the airways of the lungs, the digestive tract, and many other organs that constantly interact with the outside environment. Because epithelial cells are repeatedly exposed to sunlight, inhaled pollutants, chemicals, microbes, food, and other environmental agents, they experience far more DNA damage than many other cell types. This explains why more than 90% of all human cancers originate from epithelial tissues. These cancers are collectively known as carcinomas. Whether the cancer develops in the skin, lungs, breast, colon, stomach, or many other organs, it often begins in these protective epithelial layers that serve as the body's first line of contact with the external world. The transformation from a healthy cell into a cancer cell is usually a gradual process rather than an instant event. A normal cell first experiences DNA damage. If that damage is not completely repaired, permanent mutations begin to accumulate. As more critical genes become altered, the cell loses its normal growth controls and starts dividing uncontrollably. Over time, these abnormal cells form a tumor, which may eventually invade nearby tissues and spread to distant organs through metastasis. Cancer is therefore not simply uncontrolled growth. It is the end result of years of accumulated genetic damage and biological evolution. Genetics also contributes to cancer risk, but perhaps not in the way many people imagine. Although inherited mutations can increase susceptibility to certain cancers, they account for less than 10% of all cancer cases. Most cancers are not inherited. Instead, they develop because acquired mutations accumulate throughout life under the combined influence of aging, environmental exposures, lifestyle choices, and random errors that occur during normal DNA replication. Inherited mutations do, however, play an important role for some individuals. Children born with mutations in specific cancer-predisposing genes may develop cancers at younger ages or have a significantly increased lifetime risk. Examples include inherited childhood leukemias, retinoblastoma, and several hereditary cancer syndromes. Importantly, inheriting one of these mutations does not guarantee cancer. Rather, it increases susceptibility by reducing the number of additional genetic changes needed before a normal cell becomes malignant. Ultimately, cancer is best understood as the product of a lifelong interaction between our genes and the environment. Most of the genetic mutations that drive cancer are not inherited. They are acquired gradually through the combined effects of environmental exposures, infections, ultraviolet radiation, lifestyle choices, aging, and the natural passage of time. While we cannot eliminate every risk, understanding these processes empowers us to make informed decisions that substantially reduce our chances of developing cancer. The key message is both simple and encouraging. Although we cannot change the genes we inherit or completely avoid every environmental exposure, we can dramatically influence many of the factors that determine cancer risk. Vaccination, healthy nutrition, regular exercise, avoiding tobacco, protecting ourselves from excessive ultraviolet radiation, minimizing exposure to harmful chemicals, understanding our family history, and participating in recommended screening programs are among the most powerful tools available for cancer prevention. As cancer research continues to advance, one message becomes increasingly clear. Cancer is not caused by a single gene, a single virus, or a single environmental exposure. It is the result of a complex interaction between our biology and the world around us. By understanding these interactions, we not only gain a deeper appreciation of how cancer develops, but also discover that many of its causes are preventable. Prevention, awareness, and early detection remain our greatest allies in reducing the global burden of cancer.